Hey guys, it's Amanda, your local Gen Z person talking about social media. I don't really have an intro. Maybe I should come up with an intro. I don't know. You know it's me. It's Amanda. Hi. Um, anyway, I'm talking about social media and sustainability, not greenwashing sustainability like when H&M pretends to care about the environment by slapping conscious onto clothing labels, but sustainability as it relates to the seemingly endless demand for growth on social media and how it impacts creators. On social media, there's this assumption that creators can and should keep growing forever, no matter what, because there's essentially no limit. Unlike natural resources such as oil and trees, which are finite, likes, views, and followers are this seemingly limitless currency, and no matter how much you reach, there's kind of this insatiable desire for more, because why not? Most major social media platforms are inherently biased toward encouraging this endless growth expectation. One, because CEOs are legally obligated to make more money for their shareholders, and two, when your product is a social media platform, scaling up is relatively easy. You don't need a huge workforce or a bunch of land, you just need to get more people's eyeballs on a screen for a longer amount of time. I recently read this book called Throwing Rocks at the Google Bus by Douglas Rushkoff, which really effectively critiqued the flaws in the digital economy, namely the need for companies to be on this exponential and endless growth track for the sake of growth. Rushkoff argues it's getting to a point where this growth-centric ideal really isn't producing value, and there is a way to reprogram the digital economy to promote sustainable growth instead. It's an incredibly interesting read, and it really got me thinking about growth and sustainability as it relates to social media, specifically on YouTube. On YouTube, I think it's incredibly easy for anything that isn't growth to feel like failure because it's a platform where growth can be in exponential terms in the form of like blowing up and there's seemingly no ceiling, but lack of growth isn't inherently a bad thing. Trees don't grow forever, but they still stand for a considerable amount of time, and people don't grow forever, but we endure adulthood for several decades. Not growing at an insanely fast rate forever doesn't mean you're dead, it just means you're not a kid anymore. So today I'm going to be talking about the impact that this relentless demand for growth has on creators. But before I get into that, I'd like to thank BetterHelp for sponsoring today's video. BetterHelp is a professional online counseling service that securely assesses your needs and matches you with your own licensed professional therapist. It's not a crisis line nor self-help, but there is a broad range of expertise in BetterHelp's counselor network, which may not be available to you locally. BetterHelp is available worldwide. Anyone can use it. You can log into your account anytime and send a message to your counselor. I know that if therapy wasn't available to me online, I probably never would have explored it, and I'm so glad that I did. You'll get timely and thoughtful responses, plus you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions. BetterHelp is committed to facilitating great therapeutic matches, and they make it free to change counselors if needed. It's more affordable than traditional office counseling, and financial aid is available. So visit betterhelp.com/AmandaMariana, that's better, H-E-L-P, to get 10% off your first month. Okay, back to the video. So I'm going to divide my thoughts on the YouTuber growth imperative, which is not a real term, but you know what I mean, into 3 sections: the good, the bad, and the ugly. If you're lucky, the exponential growth that the YouTube algorithm affords can work very well in your favor. If your video goes viral on YouTube or you start getting picked up by the algorithm, your life can essentially be changed overnight, or at least over the course of a few weeks or months. People find themselves making more money than they ever thought was possible because of it, and I genuinely believe that 99.9% of the time, it changes people's lives for the better. So that's the good. You can make a lot of money relatively quickly with little to no monetary investment. But that also brings me to the bad. YouTube is kind of like the normal economy in that it mostly rewards a few people at the top. Matthias Bartel of the Offenburg University of Applied Sciences has published a report that examines how difficult it is to attain a livable wage from YouTube ad revenue. Among other statistics, Bartel's 2016 study revealed that the top 3% of creators received nearly 90% of all YouTube viewership in 2016, up from 64% a decade ago. I think a lot of people had the idea that digital platforms would be more equal than the real world and give more people a chance to succeed because of their like technical and, faceless, unbiased nature. But they really just exacerbate the power law distribution and are optimized for winner-take-all outcomes. For example, in throwing rocks at the Google bus, Rushkoff cites that in the days of physical albums, 80% of sales came from the top 20% of albums. But on iTunes today, the bottom 94% of albums sell fewer than 100 copies each. And these figures are roughly the same in every creative industry. On top of this, I do think it requires a great deal of luck and privilege to even get to the point of making a decent amount of money on YouTube, and I talk about that more in my Myth of Meritocracy video, which you can watch on YouTube. Even after you get to the point of being a creator who can make a decent amount of money, there's still a constant pressure to grow, and it can really take a toll on one's mental health. As easy and as fun and as amazing it seems to be a YouTuber, having a significant income stream or your whole job tied to an unforgiving algorithm and how many likes and views you get can be really hard. Even if it's not about the money, I feel like creators' self-worth and identity can really get wrapped up in their YouTube performance. This brings me to the bane of my existence, the YouTube Creator Studio. I say this with a grain of salt because I'm actually really grateful for YouTube and to be able to have, this platform and this audience. And for me, truly all the good outweighs all the cons. But let me just talk about the interface of Creator Studio and why I dislike it, and maybe other creators feel this way. Obviously, it's helpful to have access to metrics about your video's performance so you can be aware of what works and what doesn't work for your channel. But if your channel is not having a crazy growth spurt, the way the analytics are presented can suck. On the channel dashboard, YouTube has a few sections. The first one is the latest video performance, which, as it sounds, shows you how your latest video is performing. It shows you the views, the average watch time, and the click-through rate. But most importantly, it shows you this information in comparison to your other uploads. You'll get green upward pointing arrows if it's doing better than normal, and red downward pointing ones if it's flopping. And another very important feature is that it shows the ranking by views, which compares your most recent video to your other top 10 videos in that same time frame, whether it's an hour since you uploaded or 2 weeks. Obviously, it's best to have your latest video be at the #1 ranking all the time, but if your channel isn't growing at a super high rate like it might have been in the past, it's difficult to get your video to be #1, and it really sucks if it's on the lower end of the ranking system. Whenever I upload a video, I check my channel dashboard and specifically this ranking statistic to a fault. It's quite demoralizing to see that a video you just uploaded is ranked like #9 out of 10 when videos you uploaded in the past when you had less subscribers are outperforming it. It doesn't ruin my whole week or anything, I get over it in a few hours, but there's even been points where I'm like, damn, I don't know if I'll ever see that #1 ranking video thing again with like the little confetti gif. If you post on YouTube, you know what I'm talking about. And that kind of sucks. I feel like the worst part about chasing that #1 rank status is that when you actually get it, one, it doesn't bring you as much happiness or joy as you thought it would, and two, the immediate next thought is, well, how am I gonna top this? So no matter what the outcome is, I feel like this layout can make creators feel like they're under constant pressure to outperform themselves. I think this kind of gamified ranking design really lends itself to obsessive refreshing and checking and an endless feedback loop of trying to get short-lived bursts of dopamine, which just really doesn't help anyone. The next part of the Creator Studio homepage is the channel analytics section, which shows how many subscribers you have and over the past 28 days, how much views, watch time, and subscribers you've earned. Again, this thing is pretty much fine and dandy if your channel is doing well and outperforming its previous 28 days. It shows you green arrows that point up and says you're doing a great job. But if you're not doing better than your previous 28 days, it basically tells you that you're down bad. And again, like the latest video ranking, it's measured relatively, so even if you're gaining thousands of subscribers and views, it could look really bad in comparison to what you got a month ago. Like if you got 20,000 subscribers last month, but 10,000 this month, which is still a solid number for most people, it tells you that you're doing 50% worse instead of showing you that 10,000 is a net positive. I think the goal of displaying metrics in this way is to encourage creators when they're doing well, but if you're not outpacing yourself, this display is like a bunch of negative reinforcement, which sucks when you're still growing, just not as fast. I think sustainable small growth can be great growth, and it doesn't have to be exponential to be deemed valuable or worthy of praise. So those are my main qualms with the Creator Studio. Essentially, in the eyes of YouTube, if you're not constantly exceeding your growth, you're failing, and that simply isn't true. I feel like I've gotten to the point where these numbers and colors and arrows don't affect me as much because I'm more used to it, but I still find myself inadvertently checking the Creator Studio like 3 times a day for no reason. Sometimes even after I upload, I'm so fearful of what my video ranking is going to be, so I force myself to like go outside or have something else to do right after I post, so I don't obsessively refresh the Creator Studio. And this brings me to the ugly. On YouTube, the more you post, the more you're rewarded. More video means more exposure, which leads to more views, which leads to more money. And most creators have found that the algorithm rewards consistent and frequent posting schedules, which leads to this pressure to put out content no matter what. I think this is ugly for 2 reasons. One, creators will overwork themselves or sacrifice sleep to make sure they stay in the algorithm's good graces. This especially applies to creators for whom YouTube isn't a full-time job and they have other responsibilities, but it's still a significant part of their life or income. This is pretty common with creators who are also full-time students, especially in college, so I really admire people who are in school and post on YouTube every week, or even if it's not their full-time job, just because I've tried to do it and I usually do not succeed, although I'm trying to get better. With this pressure to post at least once a week comes the fear that if you don't, people will forget about you or the algorithm will punish you. And obviously no one is forcing anyone to post on YouTube, but when creators set this expectation for themselves and audiences expect a video every week, it's easy to get in this mindset of I will take any and all means necessary, even if it means sacrificing one's mental and physical health. It leads to young, hardworking creators shining bright for a period of time and often burning out in their 20s, which clearly isn't very sustainable. The second reason why I think this constant pressure to post is bad, rather ugly, is because creators can reach a point where they post for the sake of posting instead of really thinking about the content they're putting out into the world. And this isn't to shame creators per se, it is kind of just a byproduct of a platform that demands quantity over quality. I think this can discourage innovation on the platform because creators might be more inclined to post what they know will get views, not just in terms of specific trending videos, but even with their editing and thumbnail styles and mimicking successful personalities in order to achieve success. This also kind of brings me to a more existential problem with social media in general, but with this pressure to constantly post and outperform yourself comes the loss of deeper thinking and true craftsmanship. This might sound dramatic to some people, but in this digital age, ideas aren't things that like marinate in your head for a long period of time. If you have an idea, you tweet about it, or you turn on your camera and talk about it and upload it to YouTube, and that's it. There's very little time between original thought and broadcasting it to the entire world without any sort of refinement or deep thinking or gaining a new perspective. And of course, not all content or thoughts need to be so steeped in wisdom, but I do think it's troublesome that steeping, that really thinking is in conflict with the primary purpose of social media, which is constant growth. And this is something that I think will kind of just affect our generation on a more macro level and much more with a gradient than like a sharp drop-off of critical thinking skills. We're in this weird era now where fame has been somewhat democratized because of platforms like YouTube, but at the same time, to like even get into the entertainment industry now, in some cases, the prerequisite is to be social media famous, to already have an audience. And people strive for followers and likes at the expense of developing a skill or a craft to even be famous for. And then we end up with a bunch of people who are famous for being famous. Ironically, there's a really great Twitter thread that really hits the nail on the head with this concept of craft being lost to constant creation. The influence of social media has created a perspective in artists that they need to produce masterful quality works in a large enough quantity so that they can be shared on an almost daily basis. This is an impossible standard that forces artists to create uninspired work. Issues resulting in lack of depth, emotion, personality, and sincerity in the production of visual works arise. If visual art is not captivating enough on first glance, a like will not be granted from the audience and the digital work will die. This impossible turnaround time on production results in a disconnection between the artist and their work, and largely the work from the audience. Growth is measured in numbers on a large scale. Without likes, retweets, follows, the artist has missed their mark and failed. And I totally agree with this in the context of art and artists on social media, and in the context of creators on YouTube as well. People are thinking about how they are packaging and presenting things to the world before they're actually thinking about what's inside that package. And because of this weird backwardness where you're creating for a click or a like and not for the purpose of creating something that you want to make, sometimes there's like nothing to it. There is no why. The why is I wanted clicks, and don't we all? That's our currency. I'm not above creating in this way either. I'm very aware of it because I'm an active participant. If I can't think of an eye-catching thumbnail and title before I make a video, then I realize that it's probably not worth it for me to make that video because it probably won't get views. And even if you do think of like the thumbnail and title beforehand, it's still not even guaranteed. That being said, because there is an ever-increasing amount of this sort of empty content, I think it's increasingly important to create content with something inside. And I say this in the most unpretentious way possible. I don't care what the something is. It doesn't have to be groundbreaking ideas or intellectual or the most beautiful thing ever. I just think something is better than nothing. Social media has allowed people to brand and market themselves really well, and people are getting better at marketing themselves than actually making content or craft because the platforms incentivize creators to outperform in terms of views, not in terms of the quality of content itself. So yeah, that's the ugly side of this growth problem, but I briefly want to talk about solutions. I think an obvious solution to this predicament of constant growth is a platform like Patreon, a site where artists and creators' biggest fans pay for content every month. It's great for creators because you don't have to perform for everyone and you don't have to perform for an algorithm. You just have to perform for the people who actually really want to watch you, and you get a stable stream of income from doing so. I do think Patreon will always kind of be a supplemental platform though, because it isn't super geared towards discovering new creators to support. It's best if you already have fans, and that usually comes from traditional social media platforms like YouTube. But I do think Patreon is a really great platform for more sustainable growth, so honestly, maybe I'll make one day. Yeah, let me know if you're interested in that. Besides Patreon, I think the next best solution is to address the problem of unrealistic growth expectations at the root, which is honestly digital industrialism and this idea that growth of companies should be exponential and all-consuming rather than sustainable. I think as long as this larger framework exists, most other things in our world, including social media platforms, will be modeled after this winner-take-all system where a few people get most of the rewards. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this whole kind of predicament and any other solutions that you suggest or that you recognize. Also, I know some creators on YouTube post like once every 2 or 3 months because that's the amount of time they need to make really high quality content. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye!